What up, y'all? It's not about to rain, so don't worry about it. I always wanted to clap it up for Blake, so I'll never play on the same team, so
Thanks,
that was
man.
my only op. What up, everybody? Y'all good? How's canning going? This is my first can, so let's get after it. So, you know, when you do panels, you have kind of like prep calls, and then when you get prep calls, you kind of have to, you get worried about it because then you have to deliver the program, and this, I didn't even think about this until I got these cards, and then, so this is going to be a good fun one for us today. But one of my favorite players of all time is Blake, so I didn't want to say that while we were on the call because it get weird and fanboy.
Thank you.
And I always remember I think you were in high school or maybe on the way to college, and you did a East Bay, and every single other player that I love, like D'Lo, was like he didn't even stretch or didn't even warm up, right? And it was kind of like one of my funniest points because I knew that you were dynamic, and I like players that are dynamic and do different things off the court and as good as off the court. And some of your interests just inspired me, right?
Thank you.
So when you really think about Blake from a comedic perspective, right? I don't know if there's been any NBA athlete that can even sometimes make you smile and laugh, but when you really think about your understanding of comedy and how it's really played to your life off the court and how it's helped you start kind of your media company, can you talk a little bit about like how your personal interests have kind of like been the bedrock for like all your endeavors after basketball?
Yeah, I just was a fan of comedy growing up. I remember watching comedy, the old comedy shows with my dad growing up, and it was just always something I gravitated to. I did an internship at Funny or Die, if anybody remembers Funny or Die. Back in the day, during the lockout, I did an internship there. And then as I started doing more endorsement deals and more brand deals, my one ask was that can I just do something funny? You know, I didn't
Right.
want to do the typical athlete commercial where it was like every day I wake up and you know lift weights, and that's
That's what I'm doing.
that's the same thing as Kias or like whatever. It doesn't always align. So I always wanted to do something that just like meant a lot to me, or that I was excited to get up and do. And then over time I started asking for more creative control, and I wanted to be able to write or to be able to produce or at least just have my hand in some of these commercials that I had to do. So I got lucky super early on and made some solid ones, and you know, it kind of took off from there. So that's sort of how I got into producing on the TV and film side.
100%. So this is a question both of you guys can kind of answer because I think you run big brands, right? And I think it was a question we kind of like just discussed, but I think that has tremendous legs. And when you really think about, I made a statement being like, you guys run big brands and can afford everything you want, and you kind of like laugh because the budgets are never as big as you want, right? But from an agency perspective, if you got a lot of money, you can do a lot of big things. And sometimes that can leave you to the right path, the right path, the wrong path. But when you think about connecting with athletes, connecting with consumers, you have two different models, right? You have sponsorship model and you have a partnership model, right? And obviously you guys sponsor a lot of things. Can you talk to me about what you look like in those kind of particular sponsorships, and how can that kind of like live in a world of like sponsorships versus or partnerships?
Yeah, I'll start. First and foremost, yeah, Mars Wrigley. I run 26 brands across North America, so really fantastic. Really fantastic job of M&M's, Snickers, Skittles, Starburst, Extra Gum, Twix. People love there's consumers love our brands and they love our products. And when we look at things that we want to partner with, we want people who authentically love our products. So, I mean, it's not hard, quite honestly.
I mean,
we have folks that reach out to us to say, hey, I've loved Snickers my whole life. I'd love to do something with you. That's what we want to hear. Consumers want to hear personal stories. They want to hear their authenticity, and they want it to be a brand love. And so we only want to work with people who love us back, because that shows up in our audiences being able to connect.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, I'd add to it and say I love that you're making a difference between sponsorship and partnership, right? Because it's not just about turning up and writing checks and having visibility. To us, it's really about empathy and getting into the community and being a part of the experience of that community. I mean, when I think about how we activate in women's sport, it's about bringing people we work with together to create experiences that are a part of the ritual of the game and the community and the fans. So I love women's sport because basically all the all the players and all the fans are out there participating with your brands. They're creating content on your behalf, and they are creating new experiences. So I think partnership is the name of the game, and actually getting in and being a part of the ritual and adding value with brand experiences is what we should put the bar at.
100%. Blake, got one for you. So personally, professionally, right? Just trying to figure out, do both brands align, right? And more importantly, what do you look for in sponsorships or partnerships with a brand? From a Blake perspective, from a Mortal Media perspective, like how do you really find the right opportunity for you?
I mean, I think Gabrielle and Sophie both touched on it. I think authenticity is huge, and authenticity doesn't just mean does Gatorade make sense for this guy? When you're talking about actually using that athlete and actually going into a brand deal, I think it's sort of what I talked about earlier. Like, find out what they like, find out what makes them go, find out their personality, because not every commercial is going to be the same. Not every activation is going to be the same. So. Authenticity goes so much deeper than just brand alignment and player alignment or player brand alignment. I think it goes into so many different nuances, and I think a lot of times the ones that don't work are the ones that you see where the idea was right, but something was just off. You know, if one thing's off, I think audiences are super smart and they're able to catch on to that. So for me, it was about the people who I was working with, not just the brand, right? Because those are two completely different things. So if you can align on all those things, I think you'll first of all, the audience will receive it much better. But both partnerships, people on both sides will be happy.
100%. So I run an agency, right? And if anybody here works at an agency, runs an agency, you like to think your win rate is somewhere over 80%, but it's probably not. It's probably around 20%, and the 20% sucks, but the 20% is cool because you learn more when something is fractured and you repair it, and you learn along that voyage, right? You try things, right? I've never had like a real brand job, so I need you guys to kind of like coach me through this, right?
We got you.
Thank you. Explain to me kind of like when you got it right? When you really look at kind of like the partnership, like the sponsorship of something, the partnership with a particular athlete, and when you know you got it right. I don't want to put you on the table like, what did you screw up? Because that's more agency side. But in terms of just from a brand perspective, like when did you know you got it right?
Yeah, I'll start. So we've been in a long-standing partnership with the NFL and Mars. And I would say in our early days, we didn't necessarily activate it in that right way. We were looking for that right nugget. You've got Snickers, which is our lead NFL brand. We talked about, you're not yourself when you're hungry. It took us a while, and then something really beautiful was born of something called rookie mistakes, because it's something that not only people in sports can identify with, but people doing things for the first time. If you're doing things for the first time, you're not going to get it 100% right. So I think that insight resonates with not only consumers, but resonates that in sports. And so we were able to, we want talent within the NFL and within sports that can resonate with that and not take themselves too seriously. At the end of the day, it's supposed to be fun. We're trying to have fun, right? And so if they can make light of it, you think about some of the things that we've done, it's really lighthearted and fun, and people who can just not take themselves too seriously.
100%. Kels?
Yeah, I was going to say to you, I think you could be a good brand person because you're a pretty big brand yourself, mate. But no, I think I'll talk about one of my most favorite pieces of work, which was when Johnny Walker is a Scotch brand, and we had a problem. We had all the same type of consumers drinking Scotch, and we weren't actually a destination for different consumers. And we started a journey which was about bringing our purpose to life, which was all about progress. And we said, okay, went and had a conversation with Angel City Football Club, And we sat down with them and we said, we want to get behind and accelerate the game and the players and be a part of it. What do you need? What would you like? What would be an experience that we can create together that will add value to the ritual of the fans and the player and that will last beyond a walking man flashing up in the stadium? And we created Running with the Angels, which was the first anthem female soccer song for the team that they now play every time they hit the field, right? And that was the start of a series of women initiatives, and we brought different people that were playing with our brand, whether it be, you know, Brittany Howard to do the anthem with Tia P, or whether it be, you know, our favorite coach Rebecca from Ted Lasso to come in through Women's History Month and do a whole series of tips on why people should invest and watch sport. So that campaign to me is amazing because it's a platform and because it was jointly done with the teams and the players and extended from Angel City to Gotham Football Club and is going further and further. But again, yes, we've got drinks in the stadium. Yes, we've got signage. We've got all that stuff. But more importantly, we're creating experience for the fans and the players, and we're getting behind a really important message, which is invest and be a part of this community in a way that adds value. So
Forgot I didn't have my mic. I went to Morehouse. So I thought I was just going to yell over it and you're going to hear me. Not going to happen. But we talk a lot and loud. Hardest question of the day. This is for you, Blake. I went freestyle. I went freestyle on this question, so I didn't go over this.
All right,
so I'm gonna.
I'm ready.
Hot take.
I thought you wanted me to freestyle.
Agency, no.
I was gonna be.
Could you?
It was gonna get
That
bad.
would be good.
No, that would not be good.
No.
Bad bars. Agency shit, right? I'm sorry, it's not supposed to curse. Agency positioning, right? When I started my agency, everybody told me we should be a media company, right? This is 20 years ago. My career was started or ended at MTV, where I was a VJ, and I was on red carpets talking to celebrities about what they had on. I love clothes. Talking to celebrities about what they had on, not a good job, right? Because 99% of them didn't know what they had on. And then what I really identified was that I wanted to speak to the people who dressed them, who made them, who built them. And so my business became about the network that built celebrity, and those people tend to be influencers, and my entire business is really created around influencer, and that differentiated me, right? That positioned me differently. So as you're starting a media company, right, how are you differentiated? What different things do you do? Do you provide your POV on culture, media, that is something that brands of this size, brands of smaller size would gravitate to? What is your differentiation point?
I think for us, when we first started out, it was again, not to beat a dead horse, but authenticity was super important for us. It sounds very elementary and maybe corny, but our first thing is like, would I watch this? And if the answer is yes, then I'll go forward with that project. We did the remake to White Men Can't Jump that came out on Hulu in 2023. Right. The first conversation I had about remaking that was in 2016. So, you know, if you're going to get into business with somebody, you're going to start a project on something, you have to really enjoy it, you have to really love it, or it can be 7 years of just working with people, right, or working with a script or whatever it may be that you don't really enjoy. So for us, that's how it started. Now for us, getting into more branded stuff, and working with our network of athletes that we have, I think our main selling point is our relationships with the athletes is the most important thing, right? I talked about it earlier, but making sure they feel comfortable, making sure that whatever it is they want to tell or whatever story the brand wants to tell comes across in the right way. So really like doing our due diligence first, and we've started to do more brand deals now, and there's been times where, you know, I'll think of an idea for a company. I might not even have a connection at that company, but if you think of a cool idea, I might just cold call and pitch it. Mm-hmm. And if they like it, then we're off to the races. So on the branded side, I think it's about just having your own unique perspective and sort of just trusting that. And sometimes you got to take shots in the dark. And I realize I'm saying that as, you know, it's it might be a little bit easier for me to right. make a phone call, but you'd be surprised how many times people have just come up to me and pitched me on something, and we've ended up working together, and I didn't even know him. So taking that initiative is super important. But for us, like I said, is all about it's authenticity.
100%. All right, so I'll go to no cards on this one, right? This one's about cultural conversations, right? Let's just talk about the brief, right? Like, so we all work off briefs, terms like authenticity, disruption, like all of these things. That's how you win the brief, when you use the same language in the brief, in the solution, right? And it's kind of like something that we do at the agency, right? But when you start thinking about like cultural conversations, right? They're very easy for small groups of people to have conversations, but when you have to move the needle so big and so fast, right? Depending on the size of your brands, thinking about cultural conversations, can you give us some advice in terms of how you do that through sports, through partnerships? Because it's a new thing. Usually it's like big media, billboard, TVC, it's working. Nowadays you have to have kind of like direct, intimate conversations with consumers, and doing it from the size of the brands that you work for. Can you give us a little insight into that solution process on how you kind of traverse that?
I mean, this might sound really obvious, but I think it's about understanding what your brand stands for, the experiences that your brands have a right to turn up in and be a part of, and then understanding the consumer and the audience you're trying to connect with. Our brands live or die by being in culture. I mean, that is one of the biggest drivers of why people reach for them. So, you know, we spend a lot of time looking at who's our audience, who's our consumer, who's the consumer of today, who's the consumer of tomorrow, and what kind of experiences can we show up in their community with at key cultural times with key cultural people that want to play with us.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Sophie, but I would go a different route of the fact that I say representation matters. Yeah. And the reason why I say that is because at the end of the day, you know, me personally, I'm a girl from South Side of Chicago who went to a HBCU that leads, you know, Wrigley. So, you know, my representation and culture, I can work with hip hop culture. I can work with sneakerhead culture. I love basketball, so I can work in that space because I'm familiar with it, and I can make choices, and I can pound the table for those cultural conversations because I've lived it and it's authentically mine. I think that is a really important thing for a lot of companies, is that you have to have representation to be able to have the introduction. Because sometimes you can't get the introduction. You know this, Coltrane. Mm-hmm. You can't even get the introduction without some type of street cred.
No, I get that. That's my business. You know, I think the other piece here that we're really just talking about, you going back to the authenticity piece, you know, but I really think about it's having respect for the communities in which you're having a conversation with, yeah, right, and having a deep passion point. Blake, you talk about really about storytelling, you know. What's the next thing, right? Like, so here we are, we're talking about what's happening now, but over the next 5 years, how does your business kind of transform? What's the next things that you're looking to do that kind of get you prepared for an incredibly difficult world to traverse, when consumers can make, you know, we talk about diversity, right? I think diversity is one thing when you really look at it from a metric perspective, but I think we're really looking consumers from a diversity of thought now, right? Where we all have different perspectives on the world. And so talk to me about kind of like how you're preparing for that and what's next for you guys.
Yeah, I think, first of all, just diversifying our portfolio of projects that we have. You know, since being retired, I have a little more time on my hands. But making sure that we're actually creating a business and not just sort of establishing ourselves. I think at first we tried to, for the first couple of years, we tried to just establish ourselves as, hey, this is something we want to do. This is a passion thing. It's not just a vanity thing. I don't want to just make a documentary about my career and then slap my name on it and call myself a producer. We wanted to really tackle the scripted world more so than the unscripted world. But now we've gotten into unscripted. We've gotten into branded deals like I've talked about. And it's sort of a beautiful time right now. It's a weird time, but it's a beautiful time with streaming services because there's so much content to watch. Yeah. And it can sort of get lost in the shuffle a little bit, but it also, at the same time, gives you the opportunity to tell really, really cool stories. I mean, I think every year we see these documentaries or a film based on a true story that probably wouldn't get made 5, 10, 15 years ago, just because it was so controlled by the studio. So for us, it's about sort of being innovative. We led around for a company called Swaybox. It's an animation house that sort of merges VR and AR and puppetry. So you are using and artificial intelligence as well, and I know that's sort of a hot topic especially, I mean, probably in every world, but especially in the film world. But our whole idea behind this company and why we invested is, if you can use AI the right way, you can eliminate some of the work that these artists have to do that they don't want to do. Like true artists that are doing animation, right? They want to draw. They want to create storyboards. They want to create stories. So I think being smart about all this information we have,
Right.
And again, the streaming services have so many analytics. And sometimes I think we get a little bit too bogged down by analytics. It's the same way in sports. Advanced analytics has become such a huge thing, and that's great information, but information not applied is just information. You know, it's like it's the saying of you know, wisdom versus knowledge, right? Like, knowledge is knowing a tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. That's how I feel about all this information that we have. So while it's great, I do think that being smart about it and making sure that you're applying this information that we have is super smart as well. So those are always things that we're sort of thinking about when we're pushing the needle forward, is not just taking, you know, notes from a studio and they're saying, well, people are only watching this. Well, it's like, why are people only watching this? I don't think anybody really wanted to watch a show about dragons and incest back in the day until Game of Thrones came around. And then it became, or some people might. I don't want to judge you guys.
There's something for everyone.
But yeah, exactly. But you know, until you make that show, it becomes a hit. So I think just trying to push the envelope forward and you know, applying knowledge.
100%. All right. So my road question for you guys. You saw me sharpening it down, so you know I'm doing it live, right? You know, Sport Beach, cultural moments. If you have to pick sports moments or cultural moments, right? From an agency perspective, we always see like the merger of cultures actually happening, right? Like, you know, you don't like, you know, you go to, you go to Super Bowl, and it's like you're excited to go to the game, but you're also excited to make sure you're on the right list for all the parties that all the smaller people are going, right? And then when you also go to places like Art Basel, you probably see more athletes than ever, right? So I might have gave away the answer, but when you're really picking kind of like these moments, how do you choose or toggle between kind of like sports or cultural moments, and you know, how do you find a good gas clutch relationship between the two?
Yeah, it's an and, not an or.
Yeah.
Told you to have budgets, see?
It's an and those budgets have to work harder for you, right? So you're picking and choosing the moments for the and. You know, so you are at the Super Bowl, but you're also at the party. You know, you are at Art Basel, you are at South by Southwest, and you're at Cannes. You know, you have to know what you're focused on, and it's an and, because you're going to reach different consumers in different ways. And when I say about sports, I mean, if we're being honest, sports is the only thing that people watch live anymore. It is the only moment where you bring multiple generations together to watch, you know, one particular thing at that moment. They're not streaming, or, you know, a week later, the NBA Finals, the last game. They're not doing that. Nobody's watching the Super Bowl, you know, three weeks later. They're watching it live. And so those moments, that moment is a now moment that is both sports and culture.
Yeah.
And you have to do it both.
I love that. And I'd agree and add that depends on the brand. I mean, lucky to work with very iconic brands that stand for moments with consumers. Like if you look at Don Julio 1942, it is the ultimate icon of celebration in culture when it activates in the right way. We just introduced a new product format, the minis, at the Oscars. Now, that is a moment that isn't about sport, but it is a moment that is very true to that brand. On the other hand, kind of Johnny Walker, about progress. So we got behind and accelerated the agenda in women's sport. So I think it's like, who are you as a brand? Who are you talking to? And where do you have a right to turn up in a way that people want you there and want to enjoy you? And I would also say, adding to my previous points on how you get cultural moments right, you know, and this is something that we forget, you work with long-term committed relationships to pull off amazing moments, right? We could never have done the Oscars with 1942 and the minis if we hadn't been working with Kimmel and the Academy for 10 years, right? So long-term committed relationships, knowing who you are as a brand, and then owning a moment because people want you to turn up in that moment.
Yeah. I'm from New York, so I say bing bong. Our time is done here. But can you please put your hands together for Sophie, for Gabby, for Blake? I take these roles pretty seriously because I just turned this into an incredibly cool focus group for me. So thank you, and peace out, Cans.
Thanks,
Thank
Coltrane.
you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Coltrane.